Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers and friends of Iqra TV. Welcome to part 2 of this special program on assisted dying bill, which is going through Parliament this week. I've had two very eminent guests with me who have had to leave, which is Bishop Moses from Tanzania and Manoj Joshi representing the Christian faith community and the Hindu community, but they're not speaking on behalf of any particular organization. And I had Mufti Zubair Sahib with me at the first part. He's still with me, I'm glad to say. And now we can have an open discussion with Mufti Zubair Sahib, much more in detail. So Mufti Zubair Sahib, we've had this discussion with a representative, a person who was of Christian faith and a person who was of a Hindu faith. Obviously, a lot of Muslim organizations, including the British Muslim medical associations, have objected to this particular issue, and the Muslim Council of Britain. And I know that Minab, which is one of the organizations, also objected to it. And I know you, on behalf of the Patriot Council of Mosque, have written a very nice, very elaborate and very comprehensive note on this particular issue as well. What are the key points that we need to be mindful of? I mean, even Shabana Mahmood is a minister, and the Minister of Justice, Secretary of State for Justice, has made it very clear that because on faith grounds, she's a Muslim, she cannot vote for this bill, because it takes away the right of individuals to make their own decisions in some circumstances. What are the key issues, sir?
Okay, I think first of all it's important to state that we have, as Muslims, we have a problem with this in principle. And that is that Allah has created us, He's given us life, it is a blessing from Him. We don't have that right to take our life. And that is clear from the Holy Quran, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, do not kill yourselves. And many other verses, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has warned of the retribution and punishment of that person who commits suicide. Second point I would make, so that's very clear, and we can expand on that if you want. But
yes, please do.
Yeah. So, but I think there's other points.
Suicide itself is frowned upon in Islam. It's totally unacceptable.
Yes, yes, and it's quite. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that person who kills himself in suicide will continue to be punished like that, in that same way that they have killed themselves. So if somebody jumps off a cliff to kill themselves, that's how they will continue to do. Somebody stabs themselves with a knife, they'll keep them stabbing themselves. As such, so the punishment will be like the crime in the eyes of Allah that they have committed. Okay, so that is one thing. That and even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that none of you should long for death. لا يتمنى أحدكم الموت. None of you should long for death. Why? Because if you are a good person, إن كان محسنا, if the person is a good person, فَلَعَلَّهُ يَزْدَادُ, then maybe he has time to increase the good that he's been doing. And if that person is not such a good person, a sinful person, وَإِنْ كَانَ مُسِيئًا فَلَعَلَّهُ يَسْتَعْتِبُ, maybe that person will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. He's got time to ask for forgiveness. So the fact that you have been given life, this is a blessing for either to do good or to ask for forgiveness, or for both. And another hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, none of you should long for death. If a person is actually fed up on other sick with life and think that's enough, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a person does reach that stage, then he say, oh Allah, give me death if that's good for me, and give me life if life is good for me. But shouldn't ask for long for death. So
you should remember death but not ask for it.
You don't ask for it.
Exactly.
After that, the stages of the hereafter begin. And are we ready to actually do that? Actually stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give an account. So a person should not be so bold. And the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, we should use that to the best for preparing for the hereafter. So that's very clearly, succinctly, the Islamic position that it's not permissible to take one's own life. There's another hadith which is particularly pertinent to this discussion, in where the companions radiyallahu ta'ala majma'in were engaged in battle alongside Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they saw someone who described himself as a believer fighting very valiantly. And so they were amazed at his valor and how he was fighting and his bravery, etc., and how strong he was against the enemy. And so they praised him. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said he's in the fire. And so they were amazed that this person is fighting for our cause, but he's yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying he's in the fire. And that person was killed. That person was killed in battle. And so the companions, they were amazed that this person is in the fire. How is he in the fire? and then later on they came to learn that actually he had committed suicide. He had got hurt in battle, and not being able to bear the pain, he had killed himself. And that's what Rasulullah said. So in this particular discussion that we are having, if somebody is opting for assisted, dying, it's not a passive act of dying.
No,
it's an act of killing oneself. So it's suicide. It's assisted
definitely,
suicide. So if somebody does do that, then there is because of pain that they are suffering, because of mental pain or physical pain that they're suffering, then there's a correlation between. As Muslims, we have something very clear that doesn't allow us to do this. Now, like I said, there's some pertinent points that discuss around this. One is that assisted dying is not actually assisted dying; it's assisted suicide. In 1961, it no longer became illegal to commit suicide in this country because you've got no one left to prosecute. Okay, so it was not illegal to commit suicide. So now what this law is about is not for the right of that individual to die or kill themselves to commit suicide. It's about the right for others to help them doing it.
Exactly. Yes,
so the protection is for the third party and not for the individual, because they can go ahead and do it anyway. It's just that now they need legally be assisted to be able to do it in a
which is why some people go abroad to Europe,
etc., right? So that's one thing. Another thing, this bill is, I've read through the bill, I've seen the bill, I've read it. This bill was the bill was introduced on the 11th of November this year, and MPs are going to be discussing and voting it on the 29th of November, 18 days.
Friday,
such an important bill and such an important change in legislation, only 18 days to actually get your head around it and discuss it. Whereas
it's been fast-tracked.
It's very fast. Okay, a cynic might say that this has been deliberately so that we are not able to have the proper discussion on it, and so therefore it is pushed through. So it has been fast-tracked, not sufficient time not being given. So I've read through the bill. What the bill is saying is, if somebody has 6 months, if somebody has up to 6 months before the doctor says that they can die, that the person will die, then they should have the right to actually be assisted to
commit suicide.
Commit suicide.
Yeah.
Okay, and there will be some doctor that will have treated them, and that doctor will make that independent decision. This will be verified by another doctor who hasn't been involved in the care and is independent, and then that will go to the High Court and the family court, and then the judge will decide. Now, it would appear on the surface of it, leaving aside the principled opposition to it, even because of the effect of the law, change in law, that it would appear that all safeguards are there. But what we know from those countries that where it has been introduced, these are generally watered down, and these are it generally then extend to other individuals. So, for example, even some of the proponents of this bill in this country say that we don't think it should be restricted to somebody who has only 6 months of life and is terminally ill. Why not somebody who's disabled? Why not somebody who has mental health illness that cannot be treated, etc.? So the argument the thing I was talking about earlier about personal autonomy, if you say that a person should have personal autonomy, then why are you restricting to 6 months? Then why not if a person decides to do it? Right? So if your argument is personal autonomy, then, and we should be able to free to be able to make our decisions, then why put any restriction on it? And so therefore,
I think that's probably one of the reasons why they put that in. And I've heard Kim say this a few times. As I say, Kim used to be my member of parliament. She is now the next door neighbour constituency's member of parliament, and her sister Jo was a very, very close and dear friend of mine. Is to say that is a sort of a softening of the contentiousness of the bill, to say, oh, we're giving people 6 months, and the doctors the power to decide. But like you say, why not?
Then that itself is simply saying that actually later on it will allow others as well. And what you find in Canada and Netherlands and other countries that have brought in this law, that eventually the spotlight moves away and the restrictions become less. No longer the court is involved, the doctor making a decision, sometimes with the opposition of family members, and the family members have no say. So that's one issue with this. The second issue is, some people think that there may be underhand tactics to get relatives to actually agree to
that's the biggest fear, actually. A lot of people have got fears that people will be coerced, will be persuaded.
Okay, so I think coercion is probably a strong claim. Yes, what you do find is people themselves who are in this position, they think that they are becoming a burden on their families.
Yeah,
and so the reason for making that decision is because the support they don't have around them, they don't want to be a burden on their families. And so that is a reason, and especially people who have a disability. And sometimes you can be in a period of your life where you are struggling and you are making this decision. And then, but later on, you might regret it, or you won't live to regret it. So there is that fear as well, that in that moment you have decided over that period.
Yeah, you've just raised something there, and I come back to this word coercion, because that's been mentioned in a lot of places by a lot of faith organizations as well. As a Muslim mufti, a person who is in a situation where the family members feel that we haven't got the capacity to be looking after and caring for them, and therefore the best option for them is, if they were to go, हमारे लिए burden कम हो जाएगा. If a family, let's say, we allow करे, nobody does, but we are going through some very challenging times in our communities. If a Muslim family coerces a member of their family who is either disabled or seriously ill, and they've been told that the chances of them surviving are very, very limited, if any, then decides to persuade that person somehow to accept the assist dying. What is the Islamic ruling on them? What are the punishments for them?
Okay. Firstly, again, what I would say is, proponents of the bill would argue that we have sufficient safeguards in there to ensure that people aren't coerced, and that is something that they would be tested for. So rather than coercion, what tends to happen is a person themselves feels duty bound to be,
They make it
so maybe the withdrawal of the family from that person and the absence of family from that person, and a person thinks, what's the point of carrying on? Okay. Whereas had they had support of the family, had they had mental health support, spiritual support of like chaplains like I am, etc., it may have been a different experience at the end of life. And so therefore there will be a cohort of people that will be in that bracket. So if a family has the misfortune of actually facilitating the decision of their loved one, supposed loved one, who feels that because it's not a decision that the family make. It is a decision that the individual themselves make. The family have no say in this. It's not the family. The family may create the environment that person feels, this is what I need to do, but they don't say, okay, right, we'll decide on
I mean, how many times, I know this for a fact, it's happened that, we see somebody who's very ill, and we make dua ke Allah, ya to shifa de do, ya to kalma wala maut de do. So in a way, we
okay. So there's two different things. One is act and one is omission. The suicide, the assisted dying bill, let's just refer to assisted dying bill just for the sake of what it's being called. The assisted dying bill, that's about doing an act, okay, which is to actually inject oneself somehow, and so positively doing something. Whereas not treating yourself is a separate issue. So for example, somebody is terminally ill and is on the ventilator. And there's no cure for that person. It is permissible to turn the ventilator off.
Yes.
That's an omission.
That's a different.
So you're not actively trying to kill that person. What you are doing is, because there's no cure for that person, you are allowing the person a dignified death. Okay. That's allowing that person is dying of their own accord. You're not actively. So that's a separate thing. And that shouldn't be confused with what we are discussing here. This is about somebody who may validly think, maybe no pressure, no nothing, that, you know what, I've lived my life, and I don't want to be a burden. I don't want this kind of, for example, somebody's got MS. They've got a degenerative disease, and they think, look, I'm dependent on my care for everyone around me. It's not dignified. They have to wipe my backside. They have to feed me everything. And this is not the kind of existence that I have. Now, if you have a framework on where you believe in a God, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Muslims we do, we say, okay, right, this is a test for you. This is something, a test for you. This is something you will be rewarded for. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, sometimes it happens that a person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for a person that they will reach a certain level in the hereafter, a certain level of Jannah in the hereafter, yet their actions don't take them there. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tries them and tests them through themselves in their own lives, through their wealth and through their child. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them sabr. Sabbarahu. not only that person is patient, Allah grants them their patience, and then that person is patient, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on account of that patience, gives them that
elevates
level,
them.
elevates them. So even in suffering, sometimes we have, there's wisdom from Allah. Well, not sometimes, always there's wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so therefore we can't measure that. So as Muslims, as believers, this is something that we fall back on. And possibly other faiths as well. But if you don't have that framework, if you think that's it, or you're finished, then it's easier to come to the conclusion that, well, why do I want such a...
Do you feel at the moment, that the way our young people, Islam, mashallah, in a lot of circumstances, I see Islam is actually growing and developing in this country, particularly amongst the people who are highly educated. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. But do you feel that we have, as a Muslim community, the structures in place to support those people who find themselves in that dilemma? What do I do now? Or, I'm being not directly being pressurized, but I've been given some hints about saying, have you thought about this? Because we've seen so many young people in our Muslim community committing suicides over the last 5 years or so. The number is increasing day by day. Mental health is becoming a major challenge in our community as well. So what do you think we have those structures in place to try and provide this holistic support to people who don't have that structure within their own families?
No, I don't think we do. I think there is a lot of work to be done on different levels. So even for public in general, palliative care is something that needs to be funded properly. It shouldn't be left to the charities like the Marie Curie Center, other hospices that run on charitable donations to look after our terminally ill at the end of life. And terminally ill care on the whole generally is a care or relief of pain is something that can be achieved generally. There may be a small number of cases where it's kind of become difficult, but what we need to do is invest in that in the quality of medicine and availability of palliative care medicine. That's what we need to do as a society, and that's where our compassion should be, is providing an end of life that is dignified and that a person can live as best as possible. In terms of the other matter that you raise, to a large extent, alhamdulillah, the family structure within Muslim community is still somewhat strong, and we haven't got to where it's where the children are totally abandoning their parents en masse.
No,
It is true that there are isolated cases. There are cases, and it's a concern that we need to address and something we need to improve on. But we are in a fluid kind of existence in this country where our our practices are changing, our food habits are changing, how we interact with one another is changing, what level of adherence to Islamic norms we accept and leave. These are all changing, and that is something we have to navigate. And as part of that, we have to navigate that the younger generation need to be supportive of their parents. Need to know, we need to reiterate that Jannah, paradise, lies at the feet of your mother. Your father is the central door to paradise. And a person looks at their parents with love and affection, gets an accepted Hajj. It's by just one look.
Yeah,
and so that is the element that we need to focus on. And yes, there is a need also for providing good quality care at end of life or elderly life. Not every person is able to look after the elderly parents. For example, you have an elderly parent with dementia. It's a challenge.
Oh, definitely.
And with all the will in the world, sometimes you are not able to do it.
No, I agree. I mean, I had a mother who was completely bedbound for 2.5 years, suffered an aneurysm, and we tried to do everything we could. Stayed with her during the night, my brothers and my sisters. So and then we had carers coming. We had engaged private carers as well to look after her. But I must admit, there were times when I used to pray, sit in front of her and say, Allah Pak, ya to meri ammi ko sheek kar do, ya to kalme wari maut de do. That's a human human response, isn't it?
You see, because the suffering that you see, the dignity that you see, one point I want to make though before we conclude is that so this discussion is going to House of Commons. So what can we do? It's not a discussion that we'll be able to influence ourselves or a decision that we'll be able to influence ourselves. What we can do is get onto our local MP.
Actually, I've just written that down. Yep, go on.
Speak to, get onto our local MP and let your position be known to them. That you are our representative. This is the kind of message we would like you to take to Parliament, and these are our concerns. These are our, things that we would like you to address, and that is as much you can do.
And thank you very much. I mean, those are my last what I wrote down here. And Mufti Sahib very eloquently reminded every one of you who's watching this program. I'm sure you will be concerned about what we've discussed, what is being proposed, and if you really, really care about your future and the future of your parents and your loved ones, then you need to write to your Member of Parliament and say, where you stand on this, which is basically, as a person of Islamic faith, believe in Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, this is something I would totally disagree with, and we cannot support this any way, shape or form. And Mufti Sahib also raised the another point, and that is the palliative care point. If you remember, a few months ago I had people from a hospice called Forget Me Not, which is based in Huddersfield, which looks after children who have been deemed to be at end of life. Now when I first visited them, 60% of the children who are in that facility are of the Muslim background. They get only get 7% of their funding comes from the government. The rest of the funding comes from voluntary sector, from charities, from donations that they collect. And if you look at the number of Muslim people who support that charity, we should be ashamed of ourselves. So we've been trying to promote that charity, and I know the previous mayor and the current mayor of Kirklees Council, for example, who's a Muslim, have nominated that charity as their charity for this year. So please look at that, think about it. But as Mufti Sahib said, if you can't do anything else, please at least do the decent thing of writing to your MP and let them know where you feel we need to be and what your position is. Because the more people who write to the MPs, the more chances there are that some thought will be given to it. I hope you've enjoyed the program. I've really had the pleasure of having Mufti Zubair Sahib, Bishop Moses and my friend Manoj Joshi. Inshallah, see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah be with you.